That moves us to the topic of the week.
Yes.
And this week it's a very serious topic. I think every topic we do is serious, but this one is especially sensitive to a lot of folks, and it for me it's a tough topic also. And it's
Agreed.
domestic violence. We're talking about domestic violence this week, okay? And did you want to go ahead and read the things you
Oh,
sent?
some statistics
Some things that
yeah.
actually sent. I don't know where she got them from. She'll let you know.
This is from projectsanctuary.org. It's just some statistics on domestic violence. It says, just a couple, I'll do about 3 or 4. It says on average, nearly 20 people per minute are victims of physical violence by an intimate partner in the United States. During 1 year, this equates to more than 10 million women and men. 1 in 3 and 1 in 4 men. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men, have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner within their lifetime. 1 in 5 women and 1 in 7 men have experienced severe physical violence by an intimate partner in their lifetime. 1 in 7 women and 1 in 18 men have experienced stalking, victimization during their lifetime in which they felt very fearful or believe that someone will kill them. It says on a typical day, there are more than 20,000 phone calls placed to a domestic violence hotline nationwide. It says in domestic violence homicides, women are 6 times more likely to be killed when there's a gun in the house. Intimate partner violence accounts for 15% of all violent crime. So, just a couple of statistics. So
That's
basically, it's prominent in
20,000 calls a day.
20,000 calls a day, or if you think about 10 million women and men per year experience this in the United States. That's the United States. It's a sensitive subject for me because, as my husband knows, I have experienced it myself. And then I was reading a couple of articles on Facebook. A few states, I forgot where, there was 2 or a couple of domestic violence disputes that resulted in homicide. One where a husband killed his wife, and then another one where the girlfriend killed the boyfriend, stabbed him to death or something like that. And it's what raised the question in my head. Plus, we had been talking about it recently anyway, and so I was like, maybe that's a good, good one to.
It's definitely a good segue or transition into what you grew up experiencing. And I guess we'll put it in 2 parts. We could just say your childhood, and then we will say adolescence, you know what I mean? And leading up into now, and I just say, childhood. My parents were pretty, they got along per se, I guess if you could say that. There's some incidents, though, where it's like, man, they get into it, and you don't want your parents fighting, and, law officials get called or whatever it may be. I think for me personally, seeing that, it definitely is traumatizing. You can't say it's not traumatizing.
I think
adolescents maybe not as much seeing them do that because they were not, they were kind of separated by then.
And then you had seen it at that point, more than once.
Seen it. I'd say as far as fighting, I feel like, excuse me, if you verbally, it's kind of one and the same. Physical is also.
I want to make it clear that abuse is abuse. Emotional, verbal, physical abuse is abuse. Yes.
It would be like, if you take emotional, verbal, or whatever it may be, rarely ever physical. If anything, I think it was more so. My mother was aggressive with my father. You know what I'm saying? But I just saw that in in adolescence. It wasn't. I think for me, until I got like post out of high school, for me, anger issues and anger translating into
was a result
verbal
of it.
abuse, emotional abuse of partners, even possibly a time where one could deem physical if you get in somebody's space, or if you so I know for me, and that's just me having to be honest. I can't lie about it. I got to be very honest about it. What about you?
I would say for me, because one of the questions I always ask myself is why, because I was in a relationship for 7 years where I would say at least more than half of it was I dealt with physical, emotional, and verbal abuse. And I always ask myself, not in the situation, but here recently, I had to think back, and I wondered, where did I get it from? Because like, where did I see it within my childhood that made me feel like that was okay, or that, that I didn't grow up and see that, basically. My mom was a single parent, so there was no one there for her. I didn't experience it, from birth up until 10. In my dad's household either, it wasn't that either. And then when my mom got married, it still wasn't that kind of household, because my stepfather, his mother was a victim of domestic violence and actually was killed by her husband.
That was your experience.
That was one of my experiences. But what happened, what I thought back to, my stepsister. So one of my dad's children through marriage, one of the oldest ones, I remember witnessing her as a little girl, and I really looked up to her as a little girl. For whatever reasons, I admired her, and she went through that with her children's father. And I remember going, I was over time digging deep, like, where did I see that? Where was my first interaction with encountering somebody being abused? That was the first time. Like you said, that was physical abuse. I can remember him hitting her with brushes and different, other things. But that was where my first encounter, or that's where I saw it in my childhood, because I didn't really experience it within my household. And then growing up as a teenager, I started young being in relationships with guys who were possessive, and eventually it turned into, them being physically or emotionally or verbally abusive, all the way up until my first child was born. And I experienced it afterwards, even with my child in the home, being physically and emotionally and verbally abused. And one of the things I want to point out too is it is something that I for sure would say. I hear so many people say, well, I wouldn't stay. Why'd you stay? Or how could you stay? Or, oh, I hear people say what they're going to do, or how they will react, or what advice they can give somebody. But what I would say is somebody who is going through or experiencing something like that, it is not as easy. It's easier said than done to break away or to remove yourself from that situation, regardless of what you have with your family outside of that person or whatever. There's something there, and I think that people need to be more patient and, I guess, sympathetic with people who experience those kind of things, because you just don't know what the why is. And sometimes that person doesn't even know what the why is. I still can't. You ask me that question all the time, like, what made you stay with somebody after so long? And I don't think I've still been able to give you a concrete answer to that question, because it's a hard question to answer, basically. I just think it's very prominent. People don't speak of it, that they've been through. People either have been through it and avoid talking about it, or they witnessed it in their homes, in their childhood, and they avoid talking about it for whatever reason. But I think it needs to be talked about more. And I just want to say, if anybody that's watching this, or if you know somebody that is experiencing or is going through something similar, verbal, physical, or emotional abuse, they can reach out to me personally via our Gmail, which is thetrustlosetruth at gmail.com. That I would be happy to respond at any time of day or night, answer questions, give resources. I'm here to help if it's needed.
Well, I was just going to kind of go transition into, so we heard both of the childhood, adolescent experiences. What do you think, if anything, media or music is the influence of? Like, what do you think the influence of that is on domestic violence? I just say briefly, real quick. I think it is a huge influence. And in the African American community, you could say the music is misogynistic.
Agreed.
It is misogynistic. You know what I mean? And
wouldn't say it necessarily promotes domestic violence, but it does not shed a